Gurren Lagann is a show that I hold close to my heart for many reasons, mostly because of the many messages behind the show, such as coping with the loss of a loved one, responsibility, stop trying to mimic others, and be yourself, etc. However, the theme I want to discuss in this video relates to freedom and global warming. Yes, I know, it may sound like a boring subject, but this ties heavily into Gurren Lagann, even though global warming has never been mentioned once. However, the allegory for global warming is still present in the show. So before we get into how global warming ties into Gurren Lagann, we first need to define what is global warming. Global warming is defined as the gradual increase in the Earth's temperature. I know that politics can sound boring and everything, but please bear with me as it is important to understand the portrayal of global warming in Gurren Lagann. While it's true that the Earth naturally goes through periods of heating up and cooling down, the reason why it has become so divisive nowadays is because you have one side who either denies its existence or writes it off as a natural cause, and the other side says it's happening as we speak. The difference between previous periods where the Earth went through a change in temperature and now is that this one is largely caused by humans. It is our overuse of things such as oil, manufacturing, and the destruction of the environment which will inevitably lead to the extinction of all life on Earth. And if we want to prevent that from happening, we need to not only stop global warming, but reverse it. Now that we have a brief understanding of global warming, how does this tie into Gurren Lagann? Well, Gurren Lagann has its own form of global warming, which is the Spiral Nemesis. The Spiral Nemesis is an apocalyptic event in which the universe will collapse on itself due to the overuse of this thing called spiral power. All you need to know about spiral power is that it is magic that lets you do whatever you want. The Spiral Nemesis is practically global warming, but on steroids. Both of these are looming threats which need to be approached with caution. Both are sped up due to humans, or in Gurren Lagann's case, spiral lifeforms, overuse of a certain thing or things, and both will bring the extinction for all of the lifeforms who inhabit their respective homes. Did the creators of Gurren Lagann intentionally create the Spiral Nemesis as an allegory to global warming? I'm not sure, but regardless, the end result is that the two are almost one-to-one comparisons. Now that we have global warming pinned down, let's pin down the two main factions at play in Gurren Lagann, that being those who value freedom and those who value order. The first half of Gurren Lagann doesn't even acknowledge the Spiral Nemesis. All we know about the show is that the Spiral King is oppressing humanity and forcing them to live underground. Team Daiguren's objective is to defeat the Spiral King, because as long as the Spiral King is alive, they can never be free. The Spiral King leaves them a cryptic message before he dies, which is that the moon will crash onto the Earth once 1 million humans inhabit the planet. We then find out why the Spiral King did what he did. It is because of the threat of the AntiSpiral. He didn't want to force humans to live underground, but he established this new system of order because it was the only way to ensure that the human race can live on. What makes this show even more interesting is how it adopts stereotypical tropes from the type of people you will see on both sides. I'm not saying that everyone fits into these categories. These are just extreme stereotypes and do not represent the greater whole. The show presents Team Daiguren as the freedom fighters. They are all about individuality and freedom. And some of the people who value the freedom to do whatever they want overlap with the people who ignore global warming. You could say Team Daiguren is a representation of the people who value freedom, because that is what Team Daiguren is all about. They don't like anybody telling them what they can and can't do because all they want is to be free. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the people who value order. These people also value freedom, but they know that sometimes you have to make hard decisions in life which may displease everyone. The Spiral King had to make hard decisions he did not like, but it was the only way to allow humanity to survive. And the same can be said for Rossiu after he helped run the government once the Spiral King died. Rossiu didn't want to abandon most of humanity and leave them to die, but he took in as many people as he could so that the human race could continue even after the moon crashes onto the Earth. Even the AntiSpiral, the main antagonist of the series, only did what they did so that the universe could live on. They did research and learned that allowing spiral lifeforms to go about their lives unchecked will eventually lead to the destruction of the universe through the Spiral Nemesis. Okay, we have the parallel between global warming and the Spiral Nemesis. We have the parallel between the AntiSpiral, Team Gurren, and the people's opinions on global warming / Spiral Nemesis. Now all that remains is asking the question, who is right in this situation? Is the AntiSpiral right? Sure, what they were doing was an atrocity, but they had nothing but what they believed to be their best intentions at heart. They didn't gain pleasure in committing genocide. They were only doing that because it was the most efficient way of preventing the Spiral Nemesis from ever occurring. If they want to keep absolute order in the universe, they have to violate the freedom of all spiral lifeforms. What about Team Gurren? They are the protagonists of the series after all. Well, I agree that they are in the right had the show ended pre-time skip, because pre-time skip, the message of the show was to never give up and always fight for your freedom. However, post-time skip, the show points out that Team Gurren is not completely in the right either. When the AntiSpiral shows Team Gurren the result from the overuse of spiral power, the main character, Simone, begins to sweat. He is clearly in distress because he now has to face the consequences of his actions. If he continues to use spiral power to defeat the AntiSpiral, then he is only bringing the Spiral Nemesis closer. But nonetheless, Simone does what he has to do, because as bad as the Spiral Nemesis is, that doesn't give the AntiSpiral the right to subjugate everyone. Simone's momentarily caught between two ideologies. He doesn't want the AntiSpiral to continue what they are doing, but he can't keep using spiral power because he has the freedom to do so. Sure, him using spiral power doesn't hurt anyone in the moment, but it will have cataclysmic consequences in the long run. If you watched Gurren Lagann from beginning to end and did not pay much attention to the themes, then you could make the argument that Team Gurren was right in their ideology of freedom. However, the ending of the series makes it clear that Team Gurren wasn't right either. At the end of the day, neither of these ideologies were correct. The AntiSpiral wasn't right for forcing their wills onto others to attain true order, and Team Gurren wasn't right for their constant and unchecked usage of spiral power because that was their way of attaining true freedom. After Nia dies, it is brought up that the main character, Simone, should revive everyone who they have lost, but Simone does not. That would contradict everything they have worked so hard for and will only bring the Spiral Nemesis one step closer. It was through their own ignorance that the Spiral Nemesis drew closer, and only through both factions of these ideologies working together can they live safe and peaceful lives. Both of these opposing sides managed to find a middle ground. Simone is the symbol for freedom, whereas Rossiu is the symbol for order. They learned that they are two sides of the same coin and need to coexist in order to prevent the Spiral Nemesis. Simone has learned that he has freedom, but there are certain limitations to his freedom. He has the freedom to use spiral power, but he chooses not to use it because it brings the Spiral Nemesis closer. Simone knows that his freedom to use spiral power does not outweigh the freedom of everyone else who wants to live safe lives without having to worry about the Spiral Nemesis. And Rossiu learns that he must not make the same mistakes as the Spiral King and the AntiSpiral. Instead of oppressing others, Rossiu and the rest of humanity travel through the universe to liberate all other lifeforms. But because they are of different species, they have different values and don't exactly see eye to eye. This may be the most difficult path for them to walk, but it is the path that allows the most freedom and order. The Spiral Nemesis is always going to be hovering over their shoulders, so they always need to keep themselves in check so that neither side steps out of line. So what can we learn from Gurren Lagann, and how does it tie into global warming? Well, much like the Spiral Nemesis, global warming looms over our shoulders, and we should all work together to do what we can to prevent the extinction of life. Sure, we have people on one side who want to continue to have the freedom to do whatever they choose, and we have the people on the other side willing to go to any lengths to prevent global warming. But somewhere on the spectrum, the two sides have to come to an understanding. Gurren Lagann teaches us that oppressing people for the greater good is never the solution. and neither is allowing people to have the freedom to do whatever they want, regardless of the consequences, a good thing. Gurren Lagann teaches us that having the freedom to do whatever you want may not hurt anybody in the short term, but in the long run, our actions can have devastating consequences, and the same exact freedom we value so much, which is to do what we want, would it be violating the freedom of others to live happy and safe lives. And that is how freedom and global warming is portrayed in Gurren Lagann. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider sharing, and subscribing. Really helps me out. If you like content like this where I delve into the more abstract ideas of shows, then please let me know. I'm Zelonius. Catch you in the next one. Later.